All content on this channel is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as professional financial advice. Should you need such advice, please consult a licensed financial or tax advisor. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of information on this channel. The company that we're talking about is called Axon, and its ticker is literally AXON. And, we both took biology in college. Axon is, I think, a reference to a neuron, like the portion of the neuron that sends information down that long tail. And it's kind of symbolic of what they actually do in terms of their products and services. Their main thing from the early days was they sold the Taser. And at this point, everybody has heard of what a Taser is. And I've never been shocked by a Taser, but it doesn't look fun.
Yeah, me either. I was thinking for market research, we should go out and tase it. And then
I got to go to my local police station and cause a ruckus. And then
we should both put on some body cameras and tase each other, and then we could analyze it in the platform.
Yeah, I mean, their newest product is a 10-shot Taser. I think it's got 10 cartridges in it, so we could just test how many electrodes you could stand before.
All two of our listeners are wondering why we're covering a Taser company. Why are we covering this company, Gil? Is it because it's been on the craziest heater ever over the last decade?
It's because it's made a ridiculous amount of money. The stock has been up, I don't even know, 68,000%. I got to go take a look at this number again. I'm just making that up.
Yeah, here, let me give you a little. Let's do a proper background. So it's company. It's actually based in Scottsdale, Arizona, which I thought was interesting. I was assuming public safety. This would be DC or New York or something like that, and it's in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is kind of cool. Started with the Taser. It's now about 3,500 employees. They're doing about almost 2 million in revenue last I saw, 1.6, something like that. Market cap 43 billion. Current stock price is $577, which those are your metrics. They just got added as of last week. They just got added to the Nasdaq. I forgot who they knocked out. Was it Moderna? I wrote it down and then I forgot. I think it was Moderna they knocked out, which is rebalanced every year. So going into 25, you get Axon now in the Nasdaq, which is kind of cool. And like we just said, I think the Trump election for a public safety company, for a law and order president, probably gave him a little bit of a boost too. But this company's been on a crazy heater, just like up. What did I see? Also, they're here. I'll tell you, they got to compounded rate of 39% annually over the last 10 years, which makes them the 12th best performing stock over the past decade, which is kind of wild if you think about it. So anyway, here's one. It's
been on a good run.
You've never heard of, with a company you've probably never heard of. They don't sell consumer products yet, really, not like at any kind of scale. So it's not a brand you would probably recognize unless you work in health and safety. But this is a monster. Really cool company. Gil, you put it on my radar, so I was excited to read about it. But that's the background. That's what they do, and that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, and I think about the company, and their main product was the Taser. And I think for the early days of the history of the company was pretty much close to bankruptcy for many, many years. Because if you think about the way the Taser was, it's got long sales cycles into the police stations or whatever. You had to convince them to not use a gun and carry a Taser, and all the training and liabilities and risks with switching to a new, weapon, or a new tool in their arsenal. And it probably took forever to just convince police departments one by one that this was like a good thing that wouldn't get police officers killed or the department in trouble with lawsuits, right? And even if you went through all the trouble of going through a very, very long multi-year sales cycle to convince one police station to buy some Tasers from you, I mean, it's one and done. They just bought the tasers from you. They're not going to buy it again next month. So it wasn't this like recurring purchase. And now you got to go out there and find another police station to sell tasers to. And they buy occasionally, but not in a meaningful, regular way that could sustain a business and keep it from bankruptcy. And I think everything changed when the CEO who took over finally saw the light and changed the business to more of like a razor and cartridge model, with recurring revenues and a strong ecosystem built around its products.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they had just made the world's best taser, we wouldn't be talking about them. I think the big thing, what's the taser's 30 years old. I think mostly now, the first Google result I got when I was poking around is they make the body cameras for police. That's what they're kind of known for. But if you dig into their product portfolio, like you said, I mean, they've diversified not only into a lot of different things, but into stuff that integrates with each other and kind of snowballs across each other. Like if you're buying one, it makes sense to buy the other products. If you're buying the other products, it makes sense to buy more of the first product. So it's just really, a nice complement of suite of stuff, which I put in 4 buckets. It's weapons, it's cameras and sensors, which includes drones, which is a new area for them. 3, and this is the one I have a feeling we're going to talk about the most, is the software side. Software for this is a lot of stuff. It's evidence management for police, is transcription, both of like audio and video. There's surveys, there's video integration software, there's storage, there's all kinds of stuff inside of software. But it's mostly specialty built for public safety, which makes sense, but it doesn't have to be, which is where it's interesting. And then the last category is training. I saw they have some AR and VR stuff. They don't go into any detail. You can't read anything about it. I don't know if it's like real, but that could be cool. And that's something that, again, in my day job, that is becoming more of a thing, just doing like remote training and remote guidance and knowledge transfer and stuff like that inside of VR. What do they call it? Remote augmented reality, something like that. There's a space for it. And the fact that it's all integrated is a big advantage. So you said a couple things there that I think are super interesting. Instead of selling tasers one at a time and shifting the business model, also specifically into government and public sector, those are hard to sell to. We talked about this a little bit with Palantir. That's just a tough vertical to start with. But if you can get traction there, it's very hard to get displaced. So you almost cross the moat of the business you're going to build to get in at the beginning, but then you do have a moat as you get bigger. What's nice about this, again, if it was just selling tasers, maybe somebody invents a better taser. They're still going to have to cross the moat to sell into this sector. They're not just selling tasers. They're growing their product base so rapidly. And again, it's shifting. We'll talk about this. I have some cool numbers and I saw in the Q3. They're shifting so much to recurring revenue and they're selling and bundling these products. It's just such a smart strategy to roll out. And like we'll see eventually with Palantir, I think it's going to be a lot easier for them to move from public sector down into like more traditional consumers and big retail and stuff like that. We'll talk about that too. I just saw there was some news. Walmart is rolling out body cameras for their employees to reduce.
That's big.
It's big. It doesn't mean it's but I couldn't confirm that it's their tech, but the fact that like a big retail store, not a police department, but a big retail store would put body cameras on all of their employees is a big deal. And I can't imagine they would use somebody other than Axon for it, just for all the reasons we just mentioned. I couldn't confirm it's theirs, but if that's the case, you start to see them bleeding out of just public sector. That's a much bigger addressable market for them, obviously. And they're already hitting a lot of markets. So super interesting, lots and lots of growth potential. But again, just that selling into that public sector and government to start, the contracts are really long and difficult to unwind. I think I saw their average length of contract is really long. I didn't see how long it was, but like some of these deals they make are 10-year contracts. And like, you don't see that in, you don't see that in like the retail space. No retailer is signing a 10-year contract with a vendor. You do see it in public service or public sector. So like, that's cool. If you've got a 10-year runway and you've got built-in like hardware replacements and innovation and new tech, like we'll talk about AI too, I'm sure, but the future contracted revenue was I an actual line item there in their
Mhm.
Q3, and it sits at $7.7 billion, which is
Yeah.
absolutely the only
It's
way
just
that
guaranteed money.
it's just
It's
they're sitting
guaranteed
on it,
money. It's
locked
coming.
in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like that is a unique differentiator for the business that you don't see in almost any other stock that you and I have covered. You're not sitting on, $7 billion of future contracted revenue that they don't have to do anything for, right? Especially with software. It's not like
Yeah.
there's no
It's just gonna
manufacturing
come in.
cost. Yeah, it's just free money. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah. And I just think about like why the stock has been up so much when only like 7 years ago they were left for dead. And I think the biggest change has really just been the market waking up to the fact that they have a near monopoly position on this Taser product that make with a moat that makes it hard for someone even with a better Taser to just come in and take market share. And the fact that the Taser itself is really like the seed that plants, like an acorn seed that plants a tree that grows. Like once you land the Taser in a department, it, grows a sapling, and that sapling grows a large oak, in the sense that you land the Taser and you expand into software. Like you do body cameras, you do AI, you do, cloud-based evidence. You start networking the entire fleet so all the body cameras can talk to each other. You start upgrading the dispatch so that they can use Axon data to better route units to the scene of a crime or to respond to events. And the other thing is, besides making police officers' jobs a little better, like it's a hard job, you make it a little safer, and you also make it safer for civilians because police don't have like the option of just only not killing you or killing you, right? They have this other thing, like the phaser stun weapon. Besides making officers' jobs better and safer, they also have the body cameras, which protect not only the police officer, but also protect people in general, because if there are bad apples in the force, the body cameras are kind of hard to get around for, incidents that happen. It protects everybody. And
Yeah, I think.
the
Sorry, go ahead.
and I think that the last piece that they have in there that makes it really compelling is that they're always thinking about how to make a police officer's job better. One of the things that they do is they make it easy for the video of any incident report to be uploaded into the evidence system of the police department. What used to take like 2 hours for a police officer to have to manage is now like done in 10 minutes. And then also they pre-populate the reports that you have to file. If you think about in the olden days, like a police officer, every time they had a contact with somebody, like somebody, you had a 2 hour interview with somebody who had a missing persons report, you got to sit back, you got to go back to headquarters, and you got to sit there on your little typewriter, like in Law and Order, typing out a summary of the 2 hour meeting that you had with this woman who's frantic that she's lost her son. And you're trying to put in all these details so that the detective can go out and look for this person, or at least they have the information. And you just think about, you're doing that stuff day in, day out. It wears on you. And what Axon can do is just summarize that report and give it to you so that you're done filing that report in like 20, 30 minutes. Like it's, it's, if you think about how addictive that is for the police force, it's literally like Chat GPT for students, but instead it's like Chat GPT for police officers. Like the most compelling thing for a student is, avoiding have to spend half a day writing a 10-page paper. Now, most students are just like, I'm going to get started with Chat GPT just to, you know, get everything rolling. And then now they're done in like 20 minutes or something like that, which is a whole separate issue. But for police officers, it leads to massive productivity gains. Like I've seen some police departments say that officers have a 75% reduction in their administrative task time, which literally implies that if there's a 75% reduction, they're 4 times as productive. They're 400% productivity gains just from like having automatic transcription of event reports and pre-populating the fields with the drafts. into the templates that they use to report everything, all the contacts that they have during the day. It's such a no-brainer for police officers to adopt this system that it creates one of the most massive moats I've ever seen in software in general. It's a brilliant system, brilliant company, brilliant product, and the margins. Like, I don't know if you've seen the margins. The margins of this company are pretty tremendous. Like, if I look at what they're doing, not even just on the software, but also on the Taser side, they charge some pretty good margins. I'm just pulling up this report here. Take a look at that.
Margins are amazing. The flywheel for this company, that's a phrase, we've talked about on the podcast, but um, what's interesting also, I remember reading, or maybe it was a transcription of one of the calls. The CEO originally, and maybe this is when you're trying to build a business, the most important thing is like listening to customers. You know what I mean? This guy, Axon, just kind of has that vibe of like the products they're rolling out are pretty purpose built. They're like specific for their customer base that needs certain things, and they build those things for them. It's not like a product looking to find customers, which is 99% of stuff. It's like, hey, we built this really cool transcription tool or translation tool or cloud video storage tool, and now we can sell it to the government, or now we can sell it to the police force. This is like, hey, policemen need this, so I'm going to build this. And it's, they need the, they want body cameras, great, but we're going to build it in an infrastructure that allows us to save and correlate and draw, we can run AI in there and all this stuff. It's really like more customer centric, which is a really good position to be in when you're building those products. And again, like you see it with their stickiness, they've got crazy retention. I think I saw, what did I look up there? It's
Like 125%.
its average contract length is longer than 5 years. So their net revenue retention rate is 123%, which is a bonus number. It just doesn't exist. It's like you only get more from your customers. You never lose customers. It's like that's a unique position to be in. And again, the big opportunity, like almost every company you and I talk about, is can you expand? Where's the growth opportunity, right? Could be in more products, they could just keep creating stuff and whatever. But the real growth opportunity is once this explodes outside of law enforcement. Right? Like once you're in retail, like a Walmart, that's why this Walmart thing was really important and drove up the price. Once you start to enter new segments of market, you increase the addressable market pretty significantly. I think enterprise is their category. And I don't know if you want to go this direction, but their report had $77 billion total addressable market. And they cut that total addressable market into different segments. They opened enterprise as a $17 billion market for them. And again, that's still, it's not like that's half their market. That's one sliver. And if they can get into enterprise in the same kind of like cohesive manner, that's where the multiplier here comes in. And it just becomes a wildly undervalued company right now because you're looking at a much smaller, current market versus where they actually are, especially if they are providing the tools to Walmart. There is, for the same reason that, the Wyoming Police Department would buy their body cameras from Axon and then use their cloud software and use their drones. It's the same thing with Walmart. Why would Walmart use 5 different providers for that set? They're not integrated. There's just no reason to. And I don't think anybody's making better hardware for these things. So that's where people get really, really excited. And that's really where I want to drill in. It's not so much like, how much more growth do they have in law enforcement? And, I've read a lot of stuff about potential for AI integration here. And you hit the nail on the head in terms of productivity. That's going to be the major gain, as it is with all the AI tech you're seeing everywhere, all over the place right now. But I'm much more interested in how applicable the current suite of products are outside of law enforcement and police and public safety, and what's the actual growth potential of the company in outside markets. So that's really where I think you either think it's wide open and they're going to capture it in the same way, and in that case it's very undervalued, or you don't, in which case it's actually probably wildly overvalued. So
yeah.
So where my head
I would think that there will be a long sales cycle getting into the commercial business, but it might not be as long as the original sales cycles they faced in the early days of just trying to explain what a taser is to people who have never heard it. of it before. Now everybody knows what a taser is. Everybody understands the benefit of a body cam. And it's really just finding, in the Fortune 500 list of companies, just going down that list one by one, finding the chief of security or whoever it is, right? Loss prevention, and having conversations with each and every one of them to figure out how they can help. Sitting here, it's hard. Like I don't know, the sales case is like a little fuzzier for me. Like it's clear for me in the police departments, law and order, like why you would want to have a taser. Like that's a compelling thing. It's also compelling, why you would want to have body cams in a police setting. Um, and all the other software that's associated. It's clear, compelling case for why you would want it. For corporate level security, like the Walmart, I'm not sure what the actual application is. Is it like, retail customer service just to have body cams there? And if that's the case, like people, like customers are being recorded on camera as they're asking employees stuff. And I'm not sure what the liabilities are or the risk benefits for stuff like that would be, and what the benefits would be of, recording interactions like that. If it's, loss prevention and you have, loss prevention officers trying to apprehend and have interactions with, let's say, shoplifters, that's where it would make sense for me that they would have body cams to record the interactions so that loss prevention officers can be more aggressive in detaining shoplifters, because now there's evidence in court in case there's blowback for liability that, look, we did this very professionally. Nobody was harmed. Nobody was injured. We were just intervening in this, loss prevention case. But I can't imagine, like, it's harder for me to imagine like a loss prevention officer using a taser to put down a shoplifter. I feel like that's a little fuzzier. I can see a police officer using a taser to take down a guy who's got a knife. Okay, that makes total sense to me. But, the taser on a shoplifter thing seems, societally speaking, just a little harder for people to swallow in general. So for me, I'm excited about the potential for the commercial market to expand their total addressable market. If they are successful in it, it will massively increase the available number of targets and organizations that they could sell into. And that would be valuable. But it is a little harder for me to see exactly what the use case would be. Maybe I just lack a lot of imagination. I'm just looking at it for what it is right now because I'm not immersed in the business. I don't know. I haven't had these conversations with
So
loss prevention officers.
we can play the loss prevention one out. I think that one's actually the really, I'm about to make an argument to the contrary later, I'm sure, but for loss prevention, sure. I mean, the body cameras probably alone will reduce violent behavior, both from Walmart staff and from people. They know it's there. They're going to be on video. Sure, that video is, the cameras up in the ceiling are going to capture stuff, but having it on the person is going to change it. It's the same way your behavior changes when someone's holding an iPhone in front of your face. So there's a behavior change. And also, like, I'm sure there's administrative back office stuff. The Walmart employee that was part of an altercation has to fill out a 12-page report about da-da-da. Now they don't, because it's going to transcribe the video and it's going to, like, the same efficiencies will exist for Walmart that exist for, that exist in law enforcement. I don't know if it extends to the edges. Like, you don't have the same case management tool set necessary that you would for a police department. You don't have the same, like, evidence collection. And maybe you do, but assuming you don't, I don't know if they need to utilize 100% of the suite in the same way that, like, law enforcement as a category does. They all have the same issues. Walmart will be very different than, like, Helberg Diamonds that wants to secure their facility or whatever. Like, they might want to use drones, and Walmart doesn't need drones. What are they going to chase you out of the parking lot, right? So, like, I think the applicability, there will be enough overlap that there's stuff to sell, but I'm going to save my counter arguments until we go more into the financials of the stock, which, just to look at the financials of it, it's pretty amazing, the performance of this company.
Yeah. I mean, on your point, it would be amazing if, let's say, Walmart's body cameras and evidence collection could, because it's made by Axon and the local police department software is also made by Axon,
You
just
upload
instant
kids.
upload, talk to each other. Here's a shoplifter. You got all the data right now. And they just,
Yep.
it's just poured over, that would
This is
be pretty cool.
it, it's the flywheel on steroids because it's like, the tagline for the company, let me just look it up right now, make sure I don't mess it up. What is it? Axon Industries? Axon. There you go. Protect more lives in more places, right? That's the tagline. Protect more lives in more places. That's pretty broad, pretty applicable, right? Like that applies to everyone. The real flywheel is the more you add this stuff, if you're able, like everybody benefits. When you're adding Walmart to this ecosystem, law enforcement benefits. When you add, a car, you add Ford into this ecosystem for their cameras and sensors, everyone benefits. My point is just like all of this feeds into that mission statement. It's really just like, how do we maximize safety for everyone? And like, everything that it learns, it helps them identify more needs that their customers have, which makes them develop better products and better stuff in their product suite for those customers and for those problems. Rinse, repeat all day long. More info in, more input in, it learns more and it creates more products. And then you end up ideally running this flywheel forever, especially with the AI piece, creates. You mentioned it early, how much they've shifted to recurring revenue. That recurring revenue is the way that they're selling. That's really where I want to focus. Their sales methodology is kind of brilliant. It's not just shifting to recurring revenue, it's bundling hardware and software. They're selling packages of a Taser, the software underneath it, plus, whatever else you need, and the Taser replacement because it'll date out in 3 years. And because they're doing these 10-year
And
contracts,
cartridge replacements
all
for when
day.
you use up your Taser. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
And you don't want to just buy one piece of it. You got to buy all of it. Because why are you going to just buy the Tasers? You got to have the body cams. But if you have the body cams, you need a transcription. And then if you have the transcription, why don't you just buy evidence storage? It's all like,
it's give a mouse a cookie.
It's like, it's beautiful.
The Taser, the camera, and the cloud infrastructure. That's the package you get when you buy these bundles. These long-term contracts, they include hardware replacements, cartridges, the whole gamut. And it's stuff that like, it just increases the average contract value that they're signing with these customers so much. It's such a great strategy. I love that part of it. My issue is going to be whether that kind of approach is applicable in other markets like enterprise, which I honestly, I'm not sure that
It'll be harder. Yeah.
Do that.
Oh, and to answer the margin question that I brought up earlier, I looked it up. It is 60% gross margin, 60% gross margin on the hardware Taser. And then also 60% gross margin, 60, on software and sensors. So the body cam plus the software attached to it. Just 60% gross margins is insane. They have massive markups on this thing, and police departments love it. They save money, and they save time, and they make officers way more productive, and they make everybody safer, and everybody benefits. I mean, it's beautiful.
Peloton's margin, I think it was like 4% on the bucks.
No, Peloton had a terrible gross margin on their hardware, but a massive gross margin on their software. Like the recurring revenue from the monthly subscription had a very, very high margin. But the hardware itself, they sold it at near break even at some points.
60%, you're talking like that's Apple level margin, right? I mean, you're talking about incredible hardware. And
cops love their Tasers.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I'm just amazed at how good this business is. You've got clear visibility into how much money they're going to make. You have basically zero risk of customers just dropping out. It is recession proof because when things are bad, we still spend money in police, and we probably should still spend money on police.
And we have an administration coming in that's going to for the next 4 years. So
yeah,
right?
I can't imagine Donald Trump saying like we shouldn't have police. That's the craziest thing I have ever heard. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good business, and you can pretty much treat it like a bond. You know how like in a bond you value the cash flows as if like, they're well defined, you have high visibility, and the only risk is that the company somehow goes bankrupt. So you price the bond accordingly to that. But if the company was not going to go bankrupt, let's say it's a US government bond, I mean, like you just price it according to the time value of money, right? This one in here it's as close to a US government bond as you can get in the stock market. You can price
Yeah,
it exactly whatever the yield is.
I would love to quote you on that when this company falls apart because of whatever reason, and
Yeah.
it's so embarrassing for you.
Tasers,
Yeah.
tasers give you cancer. If that
Something like,
happens, then yeah.
well, you had also, don't forget,
Mhm.
everyone, our disclosures at the beginning of the podcast. All of these are risky.
Yeah,
Even,
I'm a
but,
complete idiot. Don't listen to me. This is
yeah,
not financial advice.
no, let's dive into the valuation. I think that's probably a good place to spend a like. I think I first looked at it. Look, I've never heard of this company. It's full disclosure till you sent it to me, and like, let's talk about this one. They're trading at like 160 times earnings. It's not, if you look
Yeah,
at like, again, I'm just look at the price, right? So that's my first thing is always like look to the price to earnings. It's not the best metric for growth stage companies or companies in that like market capture phase, which they're in. So like it's not, maybe not the best metric to use, but either way, it's like the first number my eyes go to. That's really expensive. The price to sales is an interesting one. I like that. We use that for Palantir and maybe who else do we do price to sales? And we used it for the cosmetic company.
Out.
Health, yeah. Just better metric than price to earnings, I thought for that. It's more optimized for growth versus like bottom line earnings. It's at almost 25 times sales. Last numbers
That's
I
pretty
saw,
high.
it's
That's pretty
really
high.
high. And it's also high even
Yeah.
for Axon. It's more than 2 times what it's been over the last 10 years. And I was looking
Yep.
back year over year. In 2017, for example, just as an example, Axon was at 3 times sales. So,
Yeah.
and if you look at the last
That would
six
have been a
quarters,
good time to buy.
yeah, yeah, we should
We
have done
got
this.
here. Look, I,
This
yeah,
should have
I'm not even gonna dispute anything that you're saying. The PE ratio is high. The price sales ratio is high. The price to free cash flow ratio is high. And the yeah, it's the market has clearly and maybe overly so accorded a lot of value to this company based on all of its merits, as we have discussed. Yeah, it's that the valuation is pretty much the only thing I don't love about this company.
well,
Maybe the only other thing I don't love about the company is the long sales cycle into, organizations. So
so
that's the
that's
only
ironic you
big
said that.
criticism.
The first part, I agree with you. The second part, I don't. I'm not concerned at all about the sales cycle. They need to show me they can do it, which they've already done. And at that point, it's just how long does it take, right? If you, like you said, to a bond, is it 3 years to 5, 7, 8? Who cares? Because once they get them in, you're talking about 10-year contracts and basically you have customers for life. I think it has a lot of growth already priced into it. So it kind of has to capture some of these new market
Yep.
segments to justify its current price, which,
That's
that's,
why that's why I'm mentioning the long sales cycle. Because if it's overpriced, it's got to grow fast to catch up to its price level. And if it's got a long sales cycle and I'm handicapping the odds, I feel like there might be disappointment in the future if it takes a little longer to sell into the Walmarts, the Boeings, the Exxon Mobils of the world, the Targets of the world, right? And whenever people feel disappointed, they'll discount the stock.
right. So
That's where I'm headed
that,
with that.
yeah, no, you're spot on, man. You're like you jumped my conclusion. Yeah, I think it's pricing in a lot of growth that it has to get, and the question is how quickly can it adopt that growth? And I think if you look at earlier in the company's history, which is how you started this whole pod, it's a slog. Like you're going to have to get to know these new customers. Walmart is going to be a whole new kind of customer. And what makes Axon great is they spent the time to know their customers really, really well to build those products, not the other way around.
Kind of like Palantir, actually. That's exactly what Palantir was doing. Yeah,
Yes.
and it's been on a tear.
The difference, well, I'm glad I bought it when I said we should buy it.
You're a genius, a stock market genius.
I'm the two-time champ. The difference with Palantir, because it's pure play software and it's AI, it's purpose-built AI, which means
Hmm.
that is much more generally applicable to any industry than this bundling of hardware and software specifically for law enforcement, right? So I think Palantir has actually a much easier path to sell into new verticals. Maybe it takes a while, like any enterprise sales, but like that software, if it's doing cool stuff like, AI inside of an organization to find opportunities, sales, marketing, analytics, that's going to apply to any company. Even going backwards into something like law enforcement. And the fact that they started in government and public sector, to me, was a huge competitive advantage. This, I'm not so sure it's a huge competitive advantage. If it was valued as the market leader in law enforcement and public safety, and like it had priced in infinite growth in that vertical, I would still buy it. Like you said, then it looks like a bomb to me. But if you're assuming that they can sell downstream into new verticals that easily, just as easily as they're able to adopt a new law enforcement customer, I'm not buying that story. I think they're going to have to learn this customer segment. They're basically going to start from scratch. And a lot of their product suite, unlike Palantir, a lot of their product suite is not going to be applicable to the vast majority of those customers. So I don't know, you can't assume the same kind of sales and growth into that full set of the addressable market. And that should hit the valuation. And it doesn't, because the valuation's treating it like it's just infinite law enforcement. And that's not a
Yep.
great look.
That's I really have a hard time swallowing the valuation there. And I think about, okay, I'm opening my mind to the possibilities. Okay. I'm just not being critical. I'm just thinking about, okay, what are their growth prospects that I might not be anticipating? And on the last call, the CEO was talking about how excited he was with these recent two acquisitions that they made, I think in 2023 and 2024. One was a US-based manufacturer of small drones. And you can see why that could kind of make sense for them if they have the law enforcement angle, because um, we've seen from the Ukraine war and everything else that's been developing in the world how valuable and powerful drones are, and how it could be used in the civilian plane for law enforcement purposes to give police officers an advantage in surveilling a situation and managing it. That the biggest manufacturer in the world of drones is currently DJI in China. And so if you're going to be law enforcement, you kind of don't want to be buying or relying your supply chain for drones on a Chinese manufacturer. So they found one that is a US based one. And then the second thing that they did in 2024 was they bought this startup that's focused on drone interdiction. So basically, it's some sort of form of like electronic warfare to be able to surveil not military drones or law enforcement drones, but random people's drones that are in an area. Okay. Maybe these are good guys, maybe these are bad guys. But if it's a bad guy, be able to track a drone in an area and use electronic warfare to drop it, like just sever the connection with the controller and land it safely in a particular location. So the CEO was mentioning that law enforcement agencies in the near future are probably going to have to think really hard about bumping up their capabilities, their drone capabilities on the offensive side, like be able to launch their own drones for law enforcement purposes. But also on the other hand, they also need to bump up their ability to deal with drones from bad guys, which I think is the biggest underpriced risk in our society today. The fact that it's so easy to get a drone, the fact that it's not that hard to learn how to operate the drone, and the fact that there are people now today who are very, very experienced in arming drones. Like the Ukraine war and the war in Syria and everything else that's been happening has built up a lot of stored knowledge that can be found where you can make a drone into a weapon and attack soft targets. And I think the CEO is correctly anticipating that in the future, law enforcement agencies across the country are going to have to catch up and have that capability to deal with that type of threat. And
Yeah.
if they don't, then the threat will be more likely to happen, and then they'll have to catch up afterwards too. Um, so I don't even know how to model what that business, the drone would business would be. If you looked at the startups, both of them were burning cash, but it kind of didn't even matter what their history is because now folded in under the Axon leadership, they've got distribution, they've got sales and marketing, they got all the connects with the law enforcement agencies, and most importantly, Axon's got the trust, right, of these organizations. They're not just some rando startup, trying to sell drones to a police station. It's Axon selling drones to a police station. And that's got to mean something. And I just don't even know how to model what that looks like for the future. Obviously, the market might be pricing that in already, which explains why it's at 125 PE. But for myself sitting here, I don't know if it's cheap. I don't know if it's expensive. I don't know what that means.
Well,
But it's something.
what's the level of brand value or brand trust worth? And what's like, I think about that, we've both talked about Apple a million times dating back 20 years, right? They've been more of, maybe this is a bad analogy, but they're more walled garden, right? I'll approve what's in the app store. I'll approve what can be on the phone. I'm going to approve the way you can lay these things out. I'm going to, right? So they own that. There's a level of security that comes with that kind of control. There's the interplay of security and openness, right? Like those tend to go a seesaw. So Apple's on the one side of it. And then, when I think about like what features you want in your phone, which has all of your most private information and your personal photos and your passwords and everything. There's a reason that Apple dominates the market. It's not because they have a better camera, and it's not because you can send blue text messages, right? Like, I really think, genuinely speaking, people want a device like that to be more secure, and they trust that Apple brand. But like, what's that worth? I think enough to completely dominate that market. And I think when you see the Apple logo on other types of products where you value security, you bring that with you. So I think there's a ton of value. I don't know how to value it at like a quantitative level, but if I imagine if I was, again, this is where I want to go, like how applicable is this to certain companies? But if I was the CEO of Walmart and I got pitched 5 different body cam providers, there's just no universe I go with a different vendor than Axon. Even if the
I go
product
with
is,
Axon. Yeah.
even if
Yeah.
the tech was better, even if this one's in 1080p and Axon's isn't, don't care. I just don't care. I want to know it's going to work. I want to be able to tell my boss that, I bought the best, this is the same product that our local police uses. This is the same one that the government uses. Like, there's so much air cover. It's the same reason like people buy Cisco and Microsoft, and they've come to dominate market. You don't have to reinvent the wheel by picking by buying products from some obscure vendor. This is the market leader for a reason, and they have built that trust. I think they are a brand that you can trust. And I think if I was a big time CEO, if I was, I don't know, like even like United Healthcare, like, oh, we're worried that our CEOs and corporate team are going to get hunted down in the streets. So we want some level of protection or personal protection device, and maybe Axon builds a personal taser or something. Like, there's just no scenario I can envision that the CEO says, no, I don't want to buy from Axon. I want to buy from this other vendor in San Francisco that built a smaller, better, more portable. No, we're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
There's just no reason to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of value there. I think there are some questions, though. It's not just on the valuation. And I'll bring them up just so I don't, we're both pretty, I think, bullish on the branding, positioning, and products, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my questions when I was really digging into it, we talked a little bit about the sales. So I wrote that down. Can they run the same sales playbook into enterprise or into other industries? And like, you're not going to sell a bundle to Walmart, right? They're not going to buy tasers and drones, and they're not going to
Yeah.
need the same kind of
It's harder.
services. You're
Yeah.
not going to
It's
sell
harder.
that. You're not going to be on these 10-year contracts with upgrades and replacements, because it's not a lot that they're going to do these things in the same way like law enforcement would. So that's number one.
Mm-hmm.
2, I have some underlying like basic premise questions. Like, do tasers work effectively? Like, everybody assumes that, yes, it's the best alternative to a lethal option, but like, maybe there's something else that's going to come up that isn't a taser. I think the biggest issue with tasers, they don't always work. And it's really dangerous for a
True.
police officer to tase somebody who's violent. You can tase someone 3, 4, 5 times, and some people it doesn't take, and they'll still beat the shit out. So like,
Yeah.
do tasers work, and is that the best approach? Because they can be fully disintermediated pretty quickly if somebody came up with a better solution. I think there's a good reason
Yeah.
nobody
I mean,
has in 30 years.
even thick layers of clothes. Like if I wore 4 or 5 t-shirts underneath a thick hoodie, I think that it will make it harder for the taser to get the prongs into your skin. And also, if I was taking a massive amount of methamphetamine and I was super hyped up on drugs,
Yeah.
I might be able to like not feel any pain. Yeah.
Those
Sure.
videos are
Like I get
great.
it.
Those
I
are
get it. Yeah.
crazy.
It's not completely foolproof. It's not like the Star Trek phaser set on stun, which always
Yeah.
worked no matter what. Like if
Right.
we had that, that would be superior. Yeah.
So there might be someone comes up with a nerve agent gun, something completely different, and changes the conversation pretty drastically, because it's not like tasers are a perfect solution and they just need to sell more of them. It's the best thing we have over the last 30 years as an alternative, but it's not ideal, I don't think. And then even more, like, are body cameras effective? Like, that might create more liability than solutions. You might create more problems. Like, all this stuff is kind of assumed, like the direction we're going in, but it doesn't speak to me in the same way that, like, oh, of course your phone should have a camera. Like, this is more, I think it's a little different. And I see the same thing with the drones too. Like, I see use cases for it, but it's definitely not broadly applicable to like the general market. There are specific use cases and
It's a
specific
law enforcement thing. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And
Well,
for that also, like, the software suite they've built, how relevant is that software suite outside of law enforcement? How many companies have case
it's not.
management? It's
It's
not.
not.
Right.
Yeah.
So
But
those are things
on
that
the
scare a little bit,
on the
I think.
taser question, if a startup builds up something better, Axon has this history of acquisitions.
Sure.
So
But like,
it's more likely Axon's going to try to acquire them because it's already the big dog. It's got the cash. And then that startup, it's going to go through the same sales cycle Axon did. So either it runs out of money trying to do the same end run to the end zone, or, it sells for like 50 million, 100 million, Axon can pay it. Not a big deal. So
yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. Mhm.
no, you're
And
100% right on that side. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was agreeing with you. Yeah.
and
Acquisitions
then
always
what was the second thing that you had mentioned in terms of the
body
premises
camera.
that you were questioning? Whether or not, okay. What my question about that is, once an organization has installed body cameras and they got used to using it and whatever, what is the likelihood that they'll go back to the naked, like no body camera, just straight up regular policing?
I mean,
Your gut feel on it.
I would wonder. No, see that implies that companies are willing to take that plunge in the first place. I think a lot of companies are just like, I don't
Like
want to open
once
that.
they do,
Once they do,
once they
that's
do, are they gonna go back? Are they gonna go
right.
back? Like once you go smartphone, what's the reverse rate? Do you know what I mean? Like you could question the premise, do I even need a smartphone in the first place? But once you do, what's the run rate in the reverse? Like people who decide to give up their smartphones.
I'm trying to think of an example where you would reduce the funnel, meaning like where you'd actually, I'm not arguing against more, like, I think generally we tend to gravitate to more information, right? Like in all systems and all industries. You read that James Gleick book, The Information or whatever?
No,
That's a good one.
I haven't read it.
I feel like we talked about this book. Maybe I'm making it. But basically, the system tends towards increasing available information, and I think
More sensors, always more sensors.
but at the same time, like, I could very easily see a world. You see it in corporate, and maybe this is my bias working with lots of enterprises. They lock stuff down. We're going to use a secure browser in the company. You're going to use the company laptop. You're going to use the company phone. You're going to use, and it's not because, yes, it's more secure, but it's also like, we need to limit what do they call it? It's limit our attack surface. I don't want the funnel. I don't want to open the funnel full spigot on information and data and risk coming in, even though it's way more convenient for my employees to keep everything in Google Docs. We're not going to let them do that. So I can see a
Oh yeah,
company that
no,
says,
we can't do that. can't do that.
Yeah, I can see a company is saying
Not
like,
secure.
I don't want the liability, I don't want the risk, and I don't want the responsibility of having that information. So we're just not going to do it. And that is, it's not whether or not the body camera, whether you go back from having it. It's more like there's going to be more fighting against it than maybe you would for other products.
Yeah, and that goes to the whole premise of like, what is the probability that the commercial market is going to be as successful for them as the police market? Like, that's still up in the air for me. Like, I don't even know. And the drone thing, I feel more sure about that than as a growth driver than I do about the commercial market, even though it's nice that the possibility exists that they could sell into the commercial market. I am less certain about it than I am certain that they could make money on drones, because I think the need will be there in the future for law enforcement agencies to have drones that they could put in the air, and also the ability to deal with other people's drones that are causing problems that
But
are in the
again,
air.
you and I are fully aligned that this is a company that builds great products tailored to their target customer base, which has been law enforcement. Does the shift outside of that segment change them to a product company that's trying to sell generically to customers? And that's a different, that I don't trust
Yeah.
them. I wouldn't trust anyone in that way. What's the unique about them? And like I said at the beginning, what's unique is they listen to the customer to determine the products they build, not the other way around. And when you start selling to Target, now you're trying to sell your widgets to somebody else. You're not listening to Walmart and building something for Walmart and Target and all the retailers. I mean, they could, right? That might be the way that they work. They're just going to custom build new products, but their existing product suite doesn't feel largely applicable to such a big market for me.
So let's say their law enforcement business is still as successful as it's always been, continues to grow at a good clip, maybe 20%.
Yep.
And let's say that their venture into the commercial space is very limited success, very low growth, not a lot of traction. And let's say that drones start to pick up, not like huge amounts at the beginning, but you're seeing like 10 million this quarter, 30 million next quarter, maybe 40-ish million the next quarter. And, they got a lot of good reviews from police departments. So it looks promising. Do you think that in that situation, the 43 billion market cap is more reasonable or still very expensive?
I mean, of course it's more reasonable, but it's still expensive. I think it's pricing in more than continued product innovation and growth inside of law enforcement. I think it's forecasting the way the price looks to me. And again, you could even do price to earnings to growth as a metric and it looks a little bit better. It's still expensive. And I think part of that is just, even if you have like additional, like
If they
let's just
double their
pretend.
sales, if they
Well,
double their sales.
you can, as long as you keep coming up with new products that your customers want, you can keep doubling sales forever, right? So like they seem to be doing this infinitely. So I don't see an end to the product development. What I'm worried about is the price of the stock assumes that they already are going to grow into some of these new areas. Drones is, again, it's not a new area, it's a new product. So like if you told me their AR solution was growing at, 15% every quarter, great, like that's cool, but that doesn't have any applicability outside of their current customer base. So I think at some point, either you have to believe that they can innovate at a product level, and maybe AI is a good excuse for this, but you have to believe that they can innovate at a product level to maintain the expected growth in that valuation just inside of their core law enforcement, or that they're going to expand pretty easily outside and their market just becomes massive and they don't have to innovate so much on the product side. They can just sell similarly to the way they've been selling into other types of companies. I'm more bullish on the former. I think like you said, if you could watch one of these product lines just start to grow and gain massive adoption and have utility and be relevant, that would justify probably much closer. I don't know if, again, it's so expensive. It's so expensive. But if they're able to grow like this so far without really selling into other areas, even if they're only selling a couple of the products into body cameras only.
Like just eat up more and more and more of the budget of police stations, right? But there's only so much budget, and they're not making new police stations, right?
right.
So unless you grow internationally, you go to the federal level, okay, maybe you can you can
You're going to
get
run
there,
into you'll run into the same problems that we don't want to buy Chinese drones. I think the problem is I'm seeing this like unbelievable company with an unbelievable brand and unbelievable products with all the sales flywheel you want to see in the world that you beg to see in any software company, right? So they've got
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
They're innovative. They evolve and adapt, and they listen to the customers. They're doing everything right. They're just kind of trapped in this pond, right? Like
Yeah.
they're in
They're
this
the
law
biggest
enforcement.
fish in the pond.
Yeah,
They ate up all the other fish.
they ate up the other fish. They're sitting as fat as they can in this pond, and I'm not sure there's anywhere to go. You're saying okay, well, like you can grow a little more this way, and you can take up some more space that way, and if you flap your tail, you can create a little more space to live. But like
Yeah.
got to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
out there to have more potential, and I'm just not sure I see that part of it as clearly in the story. I can see them owning the pond. They already own the pond, but I could see them like continuing to multiply and own more and more of that pond, but the pond itself is not growing. And so, like you said, even if they owned 80% of the spend for every law
Wow.
enforcement agency, right? Like something
Yeah.
crazy, software,
Yeah. Yeah.
hardware,
Yeah.
services, everything, right? They just eat up the budget. That's still finite to a degree that, like, maybe, I mean, it would justify this valuation, but like, it's going to grow. And if it grows, the valuation is going to continue to increase. It's going to be even tougher, right? So, like, does it justify that rate, right? To pay 162 times earnings? Like, I don't know if they can grow at that speed as they start to eat up the last inches of this pond. I don't know. That worries me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hardest part of this thing. It speaks to the heart of what makes the stock market so difficult because it's two separate things, right? It's number one, finding a really good horse, one, you could run, it could win races, and it's just like got a fantastic track record, and it's very, very likely to win. But then everybody else knows it's likely to win.
Yeah,
And then they price it to the hilt so that you actually end up being more likely to lose betting on a horse that actually will win. It's a sick game. The whole thing
it's
is
a
a sick
heavy
game.
favorite.
Yeah.
And the way to look at it is a heavy favorite, right? And like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah, you have to pay a premium. You see it
For
if you
good
do any.
for good
So
shit, you got to pay it. You got to pay up. The market's not going to give it to you cheap. If it's
what's your move?
obvious, well, okay. I think this discussion has been very helpful for me. I think about it as my stock market therapy. You're my doctor here, and
It's not good for either of us.
it's all the. I would love, to put it on a. I'm not going to buy it right now. It is priced to perfection. It's very good company and it's priced accordingly. And there's got to be some sort of turmoil. It's got to be like they mess up in the commercial space or somebody gets scared about their prospects in the drone industry, or Donald Trump makes a press conference saying that he's now against police. Like, there's got to be something unexpected that really derails this company and temporarily creates issues for them in a way where the price of the stock undervalues their true prospects. You got to be patient for it, I think. There's no other way.
You're gonna miss
Yeah,
it.
and it might never come. And it might always trade at 100 times sales. And then 5 years from now, it's got double the sales, still trading at 100. And then you just missed out on a double. I mean, I don't see a strong justification why there's a huge margin of safety in here, because I tried to be open-minded about the growth. And even with all the growth priced in or factored in, I can't get it to the point where I could convince myself it's actually cheap. Like, if I could, if something looks expensive, but then I open my mind to the growth prospects, I take a little bit of ayahuasca and I'm just, relaxing myself and believing in something, and I get to the point where, oh my God, it looks expensive, but it's actually really cheap if you factor in this, and this, and I have high probability conviction that this, and this was probably going to happen, then I got something. I got something. Because something that looks expensive actually is cheap if X, Y, and Z happen, and I feel confident X, Y, and Z will happen. So then, yeah, you could buy into an expensive looking stock that way. And I'm trying to do it here. I took the ayahuasca, not really, I'm just saying figuratively. And I can get myself to the point where where with all the growth coming in with the drones and the AI or whatever, that it is cheap. Like I'm, and maybe it's a poverty of imagination here. Sometimes that happens. That happened to me in NVIDIA. It was a complete poverty of imagination. Missed out on life-changing gains there, and it happens to people when they encounter Bitcoin for the first time, right? In 2014, 2015, the early days. What is this? Some internet magic scam coin? And
Yeah, but
then,
it's about it with T's. And if you had too much creativity, you'd have bought a lot of those at the peak, and you'd be
look,
out of all.
that is the risk on the other side. Sure, you can be wrong by opening up your mind too much. But if the thing is, on balance, if you're creative and you're willing to believe, there are some situations where, and your batting average is high enough, your gains can make up for your losses. Like, I think on balance, the stock market is geared in a way where believers are rewarded more often than the skeptics. In a way, I don't know, like the people who always say it ain't gonna happen all the time. Yeah, then you're gonna be stuck with whatever gains you get from not believing. And then when you do believe, you would get screwed some portion of the time, and you will get it right some portion of the time, hopefully. You know,
Yeah, and you
and even
gotta
if,
get a little bit more frequently than you get it right.
yeah, like even if you get it wrong 7 times out of 10 and you get it right 3 times out of 10, if the 3 times out of 10 are like 20x each,
Yeah, you just
and
described the
then,
venture.
yeah, then you're doing all right. You're doing all right. Losing 7 bets, hitting on 3.
I've oscillated on this one. I came into the call. I was kind of like, I'll let Gil convince me one way or the other, and then I'll make up my mind.
Yeah.
Originally, I was more, hey, look, like sometimes you just got to pay a premium for a good company. And this is a good company. I like everything I read. I like the management. I like the sales process. I like the way they built it. I like the way they're selling it. And then, as we're talking and even when I prep the numbers, looking at them again, it's like making me nauseous. This isn't like a somewhat high valuation. It's an absurdly high valuation. And like you said, you have to do some spoon bending, mind melding tricks to see where that is a reasonable price for the company. And that exercise basically implies they grow pretty seamlessly outside of that pond. And I can't do it because it's not going to happen. They're going to run into headaches. They're not going to sell smoothly. There's going to be a ramp and there's going to be some problems. I don't know what they are yet, but there'll be some problems. And the market, I find for these types of companies, when people are excited, they drive the price up. That excitement, it takes very little to temper that excitement and watch people jump off
Mhm.
ship. Very
Oh
little.
yeah,
Like,
that's basically Tesla all day, bro.
exactly.
Yeah,
You have so
yeah.
many mega excited investors sitting in there that will jump ship at the drop of a hat. Someone said Elon Musk is sick. It's like John's 80%. Just people just crazy. So this has some of that like optimism in it. I do think, I feel like you and I have been too closely aligned through the last few episodes that we need to differentiate a little bit. I would love to buy this. I would love to be on the buy side of this, only because all of the like bones of this company are amazing. The management is great. Everything I read from the CEO is like, this is the CEO of a good company. Again, the sales strategy is really perfect for what they're doing. Their productization has been good. Their acquisition strategy has been good. Their deployment of cash has been good. Their growth, like everything they're doing is like, these are the mechanics that build great companies. I think if I take a long enough lens on it and say there's going to be a lot of this over the next 4 years, let's just say during Trump's presidency, which will be, I think, more investment into law enforcement, more border control, more whatever, more private sector purchase of this kind of stuff, not into like enterprise, but maybe more like private contractors and government contractors and whatever. Um, that's going to be a good period for this company. I think it's going to do a lot of this up and down, crazy volatility, because every piece of bad news, a drone, got hacked, one of their drones gets hacked and that stuff's going to go down 20%, 30%, 40% because it's so overvalued. But if I take a long enough lens and I think 4, 5, 6 years out, on the whole, I think you'll be happy with your annual growth. You're like your compound annual growth rate on this company. I think you'll be like, you know what, this guy's running it right. They had some missteps, but they figured it out. They course corrected. They've managed to take their software suite and modify it for enterprise, and now they're selling that in a a different kind of bundle and very effectively, and it's integrated into government and da 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 da. I have some confidence in this company. I think I will buy. The caveat would be I'm going to cost average it. So if I wanted to put my $10,000 slug into it, I would probably do it in like 10 different $1,000 increments over time. And like you said, kind of try to hunt down those buying opportunities where the market overreacts to available news. And don't
buy the
forget,
dips.
buy the dips,
Yeah.
buy the dips all day. The fundamentals on this company are great. It's a strong business. I think it's going to take longer than the current valuation. So I'm expecting it to go down. But like you said, like you've taught me many times, you can't catch a falling knife. So, just take your nibbles.
I'm
And this
caught a
is a
lot.
company you want to be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that's good.
Mm.
It's very interesting. Any other final thoughts on Axon or anything in general? Anything that's, I know
No,
this
but
is stock market therapy, so.
yeah, no, you're released. You can get off the couch. I think you know what you're doing. You saved yourself some money on this one. This one will bite me, but in whatever time frame we do our season breakdown, this one's going to hurt me. But I look at this one almost a little bit like Constellation that we talked about also, just because
Constellation was just chugging along. Yeah.
as it still does. I own Constellation. It's done well for me, and I think sometimes you just look at a business and you say, this is a really, really well-run business. And I think Constellation's different in a million ways, but at the end of the day, that fundamental investment thesis is the same. Here's a really well-run, well-managed business that's gobbling up market share in where they're selling. They just have to figure out the addressable market piece. And we saw that the total addressable market, in their opinion, is $77 billion. I don't know if it really is, or if all of that market is applicable for all of their products. But I think that a company that has the customer-centric approach built into their DNA is well positioned to figure it out. They haven't figured it out. They're priced as if they've figured it out, but I think they will figure it out. So that's the mind bending I'm willing to do. And in that case, I'd
Right.
like a piece of it.
Right. That makes sense. All right. Well, this has been a good discussion. I guess we're going to wrap it up. Call it a day.
Stay safe, everybody. Get your taters.
You can buy it for retail use. So, it's oh, okay.
Market research. And it's really
Chicago man self-tasered himself in the groin.
repeatedly. Yeah, I'm saying it was like, there's a dude in Chicago ordering like 200 cartridges every month.
He's our best customer. Send him more cartridges.
So he doesn't want the body cam. He just wants the taser. So weird.
He uses a freakish
We got-
amount of cartridges every month.
Yeah, up that's, I feel like season 3 loser gets tased. I think
Does not sound like fun. It sounds a little dangerous, but we gotta see. I gotta see who wins first before I agree to this punishment.
I'm not making any more risky picks. I'm out. All right, Gil. Flush always. Good to see you, my friend.
Yes, always. Catch you later, man.